The older I get, the more I realize that most of our suffering doesn't come from big dramatic events. It comes from the small, quiet moments when our expectations collide with someone else's reality. And lately, I've been facing a kind of emotional exhaustion I didn't even have a name for. I live with someone, a foreign teacher. She isn't unkind and she isn't trying to hurt anyone. But living with another person reveals things that you can't see from the outside. She doesn't really clean the shared spaces. She doesn't sweep the floor, take out the trash, or clean the bathroom. Even her water container gets dirty enough that I eventually clean it because I can't stand looking at it anymore. None of these things are dramatic. They're small, almost invisible. But small things, repeated long enough, begin to touch something deeper inside the mind. In Buddhism, this is how suffering usually starts, not through the world itself, but through the way our mind reacts to the world. One day, she got sick. During their class, she said things like, "I wish I could drink this. I want that food. I'm too sick to go out." She wasn't talking to me. She wasn't asking for help. But she said it loud enough that I could hear, loud enough that her students could hear, loud enough that it created a subtle pressure, the kind that makes you feel responsible without anyone actually asking you for anything. And in that moment, something inside me tightened. Not because she was sick, but because I remembered something else. Not long ago, I was sick for 4 days, barely sleeping, clearly unwell, and she didn't ask me anything. Not even, "Are you okay?" That silence stayed with me in a quiet way I didn't fully understand at the time. But when she began indirectly signaling her needs through hints and complaints, something in me clicked. The imbalance became visible. And Buddhists call this moment seeing the mind as it really is. I wasn't angry. I wasn't judging her. I was simply noticing, this doesn't feel equal. And that realization opened a door inside me, a door that led straight into my own patterns. Because this wasn't the first time in my life I stayed silent for too long. I did it in past relationships too. I explained away small hurts. I accepted things that didn't feel right. I told myself I was overreacting. I tried so hard to be understanding that I stopped noticing when I was quietly abandoning myself. According to Buddhism, this is attachment not to another person, but to the idea of being the good one, the calm one, the one who keeps the peace. But peace without honesty is not peace, it's suppression. And suppressed emotions don't disappear, they wait. They wait until one small moment triggers everything we've been carrying. That was my moment. When she didn't check on me when I was sick, it hurt. When she loudly expressed her needs while she was sick, it triggered something deeper. Not because of her actions, but because of the story my mind built around those actions. Buddhism teaches that suffering arises from the gap between expectation and reality. I expected her to care when I was sick. I expected her to take responsibility for her own space. I expected her to communicate directly instead of hinting, but she didn't. And that gap, that distance, is where suffering grows. The Buddha said, "Nothing hurts more than wanting things to be different from what they are." So I sat with my discomfort. I asked myself, what exactly is hurting? Is it the cleaning, the lack of responsibility? Or is it the deeper feeling of being unseen? The answer wasn't about her at all. It was about me. About how often I take responsibility for things that aren't mine. About how quickly I soften my boundaries to keep the environment calm. About how much pressure I place on myself to be understanding. About how I confuse tolerance with compassion. In Buddhist psychology, this is called self-abandonment disguised as kindness. And that's when I realized the real practice here isn't about fixing her behavior. It's about cleaning the room inside my own mind. The room filled with old patterns, old wounds, old forms of silence, my suffering wasn't created by her actions. It was created by my attachment to how I believed things should be. So I began practicing a different form of kindness, one guided by wisdom instead of guilt. I stopped cleaning things that weren't mine. I stopped responding to indirect expectations. I stopped assuming responsibility for her comfort. I stopped abandoning myself in the name of peace, not with anger, not with coldness, just with clarity. Because Buddhism teaches that true compassion must include oneself. Compassion without boundaries becomes resentment. Boundaries without compassion become coldness. The middle way is learning to stay open-hearted without letting yourself drown. Living with her became a lesson in equanimity. A reminder that people act from their conditioning, their habits, their upbringing, their awareness level. Some people truly don't see the impact of their actions. Not because they're bad, but because awareness hasn't ripened them yet. And expecting unawakened awareness from someone is like expecting a seed to behave like a flower. It's not their fault. It's just not time yet. Once I understood that, my frustration softened. I stopped needing her to be different. I stopped pushing myself to be everything. I stopped holding on to the story that I was being wronged. In Buddhism, they call this releasing the second arrow. The first arrow is what happens. The second arrow is how we interpret it, the pain we create ourselves. I decided not to shoot the second arrow anymore. Now I act with kindness, but not at the cost of my peace. I help when my heart feels full, not when guilt pushes me. I give only what doesn't drain me. I maintain harmony, but not through self-sacrifice. And I understand something important. She may never change, but I can change the way my heart responds. Sometimes people come into our lives not to stay, not to teach us how to love them, but to teach us how to love ourselves better. And maybe that's what this whole experience is, a quiet reminder that peace is not found by fixing others, but by understanding ourselves. And once I saw that clearly, my heart finally rested. You're watching English Life Moments. Small moments, steady mind. Thank you for being here.